see this person, so this one is mine. Really weak.
Well, I certainly didn't know I was going to have such an audience. I really am scared. Usually I'm pretty bold, but not when there are people that I really have never known before. But perhaps I do ramble on. Sometimes Eunice helps a little, suggestions. But,
excuse me, could you,
silly.
I think the cameraman wants to see,
Okay. Would you be comfortable? Would you rather sit down?
No, I don't mind standing. I'm
No,
still
here, look.
young.
Where do you want her, Adam? Okay, right
would you
there.
feel
Hang on to the
comfortable-
chair.
Ma'am, would you feel comfortable sitting here and then you could talk to the audience and you could be looking
Okay.
into the camera? And I'll just switch.
Thank
We'll play musical chairs.
Thank you. Well, I was born here in Hastings, and my mother also attended school here, and she had a diploma. And I had given it to the Historical Society. I didn't think anybody would ever be interested in it because I've been disposing of a lot of things. So if I'd known I was coming, I might have asked them to let me see it. Because I'm sure they did not have a high school, but they probably had the grades. And we had a kindergarten, which was where the cleaners is now, just below the youth center. Even when you get old, you have to stop and think between words. And we had a large class. Those other two buildings were not there, and we used that as a playground. And there were, I guess there must have been 30 children, but they weren't of kindergarten age. For instance, the family that lived across the way had 3 children, and they all started in the class. And Jack Sinzer, who was my boyfriend at the time, he was next to me in the class, in the picture. And not many of the people, I don't think any of them, except Bill, Bill, I'll tell you in a minute.
You will.
Yes. He died not long ago. He was in the kindergarten. Then, after a while, Miss Truba was our teacher. And she lived where the Hastings house is now. That was the Truba estate. And she lived there with her other sister. They did a lot of things for Hastings. They would have, we went to a sewing class they had, and they were very helpful. Then we went to the kindergarten, the first grade in the old building down the village. That was very pretty. Of course, the hook and ladder took the front off of it, but it was a lovely building. And my first teacher was Miss Donahue, and she lived up on Broadway, and she only taught 1 year, and then she became a nun. I don't know whether we had made her feel that way or not. And then the second grade teacher was Miss Catherine, and in the first grade we had I don't know just what you call them, but when you go into some of these lunch shops and they have a little table or something at the side, you slide in sideways, and it was in a semicircle, and those are the desks we had, and you put your books on the floor. Then the second grade, we did have seats, but they were double seats, like the individuals now, but 2 sat at a seat. And then we went on up into the other classes, and see what else can I tell you. Then we had the library on the first floor, and it was under the stairwell. We didn't have very many books, and I guess we weren't very ambitious either. We didn't make effort to use them. And we had a Miss Dunbar there who taught there for many, many years. And Miss Ma. She taught the 6th grade. And later on, she was in an insane asylum. Now, I don't know it was because of the pupils, but that's where she ended up. She lived in Dobbs Ferry.
Sound like a small school.
You speak well for Dobbs Ferry. And let's see, after that, we had, then they built the first part of this new school. And we all came up for the laying of the cornerstone. And each class had the pupils, each teacher had the pupils write the name. So I hope my name's in that box. It was quite a ceremony. And
I checked on the cornerstone today, and it is there, and the date is there, and more in back of it must be the box with the names of all of the students. So your name is there.
you doubted my word.
He's a historian.
That's the way Eunice is.
Is she?
Yes, very much.
So then we came up to, when this school was finished, we came up here. And let's see, we had,
What year was that?
It was when you were in the 5th grade.
yes, I was in the 5th grade. How old could I be then?
We'll figure it out.
How old was I, Eunice? Let's see. Must have been 13.
Must have been about 1905, wasn't it?
Yes.
Along in there.
Then we had, let's see, on the north side in the basement, that was where the boys came. In the morning when you came to school, you went to the basement. The girls was on the south side. And we could play out of doors, but sometimes you were allowed in the front door, but most of the time you waited. Then they would ring a bell, and you go in the basement, the girls to theirs and boys to theirs, and you line up. Each one, you knew just where to stand. And then when the next bell rang, then the teacher would nod, and the first one would go. There was always a monitor that came downstairs, and the first class would go up, and then the second, and so on. And also, we had laboratory down there. I think there were 6 on the boys' side and the girls. You never mixed at all. You were always separated. And on the first floor, let me see, I think there were 2 classrooms on the south side and 2 on the north side. And in the front, on the first floor, was the office. And then they had a couple of classrooms on toward the heights. And then upstairs was the kindergarten, which was unusual. And that was right over the office. And there was a door at each end. And we had 2 classrooms at each end. And in between, on the Hudson Heights side, was the auditorium. But then the classes got larger, and there wasn't enough room up in the classroom, so they put desks in the auditorium, and we used that. And even when we graduated, the desks were in there, and we had our graduation exercises there. And of course, that was the end of our building. Oh, later on, of course, they built the next building, but I was out of school at that time, so I don't know too much about that.
Can you tell us something about the curriculum that you had in the first, second, and third?
In the high school? Well, we didn't have very many people in the class, any pupils in the class. We did have German. They taught, I think, 2 years. It was according to how many children there were. They'd have the subjects. We had Latin. There were 4 years of Latin, and there were 2 of German, and there were 4 of English, and then we had physics, and we had business, a couple of business subjects. I think they had typing and shorthand, and, as I said, English. No, we didn't have social studies. We had geography and history, ancient history, and German, as I said. And I think that's about
The
all.
discipline.
Hmm?
You tell them about discipline.
The discipline? Oh, well, the youngsters were pretty good, really. They didn't, they didn't cut up like the youngsters today, I guess. They were, quite strict with us. Of course, the classes were small, too. It made a difference. And what else can I tell you? Oh, yes. We didn't have any athletics. We used to play out in the back until the bell rang and we came home. We had no cafeteria. You brought your own lunch. And if you went home, you ate it down in the basement, the girls in their basement, the boys in theirs. But you could go home to your lunch. In fact, that's what they made us do most of the time. And we had some of the pupils from Ardsley. They didn't have a high school up there. So they would come down on the Putnam, and it stopped in Mount Hope there. And they would walk to school here. And then we had several families that lived over near St. Andrew's Golf. They walked every day, too. And, of course, we didn't have buses.
How about the social life after school? Was there much, or was there the same complaint then as there is now, that there's nothing to do?
No. We just went home.
No dances, no parties,
No.
get-togethers of any sort?
No. No TV, no. We didn't even know the name.
The basketball team.
Oh, yes. Miss Wells was a high school teacher. She taught English. And she thought it would be nice if we had a basketball team. So she asked those who would like to. We went downstairs. She was a very short person, rather stocky. And of course, we didn't have uniforms, but you wore your bathing suit. But they were bloomers, the old-fashioned bathing suit. And they were throwing the ball one time. We only had a few lessons. I don't know whether you'd call them lessons, but Elsie Schmidt was very tall, and she went to get the ball, and the teacher also went for the ball. And Elsie pushed the teacher against the wall and scraped all her face. That ended our ball team.
Did the boys have a basketball team too? No, just the girls.
No, just the girls. Well, they may have had one in their basement. See, we never mixed.
They didn't know all
You didn't mix. The
There
boys.
was no private
No.
whatsoever.
And the boys played in the playground on the north side, the girls on the south side.
No wonder
They
you didn't have a
usually-
social life. You didn't know the other one existed.
We usually had jump rope or jacks or some little simple thing like that. It wasn't very exciting, but we thought it was. So, see what else can I
Did you have
tell
to buy your books?
No, we didn't buy any books.
I didn't buy your
No,
books.
no.
Did you buy your supplies?
No.
Paper and pencils? And
Yes,
You
we
did have
bought
to buy
those.
those?
Yes, we bought our pads and pencils and notebooks.
At the early days of
Who was super? Mr. Williams. He lived on Hillside Avenue, and he was the superintendent. I think we just called him principal. I don't think we ever called him superintendent. And then later on, he went to Yonkers and was the assistant, and then he became the superintendent of Yonkers. And,
Graduation.
what's that? Oh, yes. We had our graduation exercise in, well, it was supposed to be the auditorium, but you remember all the desks from the classroom were in there, too. But the other side had some seats. Anyway, there were 8 of us, I think, that graduated. And I had to give the valedictorian speech. And it was very simple, let me tell you. But toward the end, it said I said something about now the school year has come to a close and wish you all happiness and so on. Then I burst out crying. I did hate to leave. We had good times. They weren't exciting, but they were. And then we had these inkwells. in the corner of the desk, and I had curly hair. It used to hang down, and John Dudley sat in back of me, and he always put those curls in the inkwells. Oh, it was terrible.
That really did happen. didn't it?
Oh, yes, he'd often do that. When you switch around here, everything was ink from the hair. Oh, and then Hugh Brown was also in the class, and Mr. Bullock was our principal at that time. Yes. I think Mr. Williams had gone to Yonkers. Mr. Bullock was the principal. And Helen Bullock was his sister. And Mr. Bullock was married and lived up on Minturn, I think. And Helen, was, as I say, was in her class. And Hugh and Helen, Hugh Brown, had infatuation for each other. And Hugh, the wastebasket was down in the back corner of the study hall, and Hugh would write a note, and I sat in the last seat, and Hugh would throw it down to the wastebasket for Helen, and she was supposed to pick it up. I'd usually go and pick it up first. He used to get furious. We did such silly little things.
Sounds very familiar.
Oh, yes. Hugh finally married Helen.
Really? Thank heavens, after all that.
Yes. Can you suggest anything?
Did you meet Mr. Fredericks?
No, no. I met one on summer vacation down at Ocean Grove.
Your father was involved with the school.
Yes, yes, yes.
In what capacity?
He was the secretary.
And you were a teacher.
Yes.
Where did you teach?
Number 13 school in Yonkers for 10 years. Then I did a lot of substituting here.
Were there trustees or any
Yes.
similar such group
Mr.
as the
McGee
school
and
board?
Mr. Balcom, and yes, we were trustees.
What was the attitude of the people, the community toward the school? Were they proud of it?
Oh, yes, yes. Of course, when we had the new school, everybody was always lovely.
Do you remember the budget then, how much it was?
Never thought of
Something
finances.
we should look up that interesting
Yes.
to know.
Yes. I really don't know.
It would stun us, I'm sure.
Yes, I guess.
Are there any other questions? Well, thank you so much. It's very nice of you to come out at
Well,
night.
thank you. I
know
haven't
don't
told you
come out
that anything
ordinarily at
very
night.
exciting, but
It's the way it was.
yes,
Tell
it's
us
the way
a
it was.
the way it was. But it was pleasant, and you enjoyed it, and you learned.
Oh, yes, it was lots of fun. We loved Hastings, and the schools were nice. The youngsters were nice.
Out of
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome, I'm sure.